On tonight's Cover One Buffalo podcast, we are joined by everyone's favorite sideline reporter, Sal Capaccio. But first, our guy is Handsome Jack.
Broadcasting live to Bills Mafia worldwide with Greg Tompsett and Aaron Quinn.
Welcome to the NFL. Doesn't matter what's happened before today. Today's a brand new day. It's a brand new season.
Your number one podcast for objective Buffalo Bills coverage. No matter where you are, we got you covered.
Good evening and welcome to the Cover One Buffalo podcast. You are joining your host, Greg Tompsett, along with my partner in crime, Aaron Quinn. Aaron, I see that you wrote that you're not a doctor. Why do people keep getting hurt? I don't understand.
Football, it's a physical game. It's why I struggle with even letting my kids play football. It's not you are bound to get hurt. But again, I'm not a doctor, so we are not here for my medical advice, definitely. But when I came out of the woods a couple times on my vacation, it was not fun to open my phone. That's how I found out Milano. I was like in the woods for like 3-4 hours. Everything was good. I was loving life. I'm cutting trees and burning stuff. And I come out and I see the Milano stuff and I just put my phone away and went back out to the woods for like another 3 hours. And it's just like
violently chop some logs.
Oh my God. So yeah, no more of those. But yeah, everything else, I'm not a doctor. Refer to Banged Up Bills. Or maybe we can ask Sal.
Yeah,
he's found out. Yeah.
Cal's been awesome. So many folks, unfortunately, we apologize to the folks who are our most loyal supporters in our One Pass Discord channel. Got their day ruined a little bit early when we heard about the Matt Milano news. And otherwise, it's been a much lighter discussion overall. And as we get here, we've been through 2 preseason games. The second one, obviously, I guess it was more enjoyable. There's only 12 points total scored. It wasn't all that enjoyable, but it was. There were more positive takeaways from it. But again, some more injuries, and one of the pieces early on in training camp, folks like us and Eric and Anthony can go out and see everything that's there. When it comes back from, St. John Fisher, we lose access to everything, and we can only see the reports that come online and from the folks that are there doing the work every day. And, our favorite is the man that we brought on here tonight. You guys know him as a host of the Extra Point show on WGR, the It's Always Game Day in Buffalo podcast, and everyone's favorite sideline reporter, Sal Capaccio. Sal, how we doing?
Pretty good, guys. Pretty good. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it, but I don't even think I'm my wife's favorite sideline reporter. She really loves Tracy Wolfson. So,
true. Tracy's great.
And
as seen on the Pat McAfee show regularly.
Yeah, that's been really cool. It's been really cool. They reached out to me about 4 years ago, just randomly. I'm like, oh my God, Pat McAfee, you gotta step it up, right? And he's got to bring the energy. And, so I literally, I told my wife, I'm like, I got to place the camera here and I gotta stand here and show the energy. And that was kind of they're like, oh, that's what happened. They're like, Sal, is this all this energy? So I texted the guy later and I'm like, hey, how'd you find me? And it's a great lesson, and just, kind of being good to people and connecting. And he said, I was a producer in whatever market it was. I don't remember. He said, and we needed a guy a few years ago just to talk about the Bills, and you came on, and it was just, you were really great. And we like talking to you. And he said, so when Pat suggested somebody, I turned to you. So, it was really cool. And that's how it all started, to be quite honest with you.
That's awesome.
Very, very cool. Yeah. And honestly, you even 4 years ago now, you're obviously much more locked in as their go-to guy there, but you still bring some great energy, even going on now. So
listen, now it's become the thing where they're always talking about like my audio and video quality and compared to everybody else, and it's true because you guys do this right, and you don't use just your base computer, you use microphones and you're tapping in, and that's what we do. And I'm a radio guy. That's what I do for a living. So when I'm out at training camp or wherever I am, I always have access to some sort of mic and a cord and whatever. So, I had the stick mic. And then last year they had me on right before, it was the day the Steelers and Bills played after the game had been moved. And I literally took my microphone and shoved it in the snow to show them what it was like, how deep it was. And that was pretty cool. So things like that, that works for that show.
In that vein, with your access, I feel like we got to get Josh Allen a mic. I've heard him on a bunch of podcast interviews, and he's got that little bit. He's got the little one on the headphones. it's not working for him. He's got to get himself a nice mic set up. Somebody, I bet the fans would even buy him one. Sal.
I bet you're right. I think the problem might be Josh might say, like, I don't really want to take the time to even care about setting this up.
He
like,
doesn't want
a button and connecting to it and all that kind of stuff.
No.
So as we get in here, obviously there's been a little bit of a more somber tone. We've had a pretty rough turn of injuries. There's been some pieces where obviously the first preseason game didn't go great, and I think the players, the coaches, everyone talked about, that no one was trying to pretend that it did. The second game, I think there was obviously much more positive takeaways, some really strong play on the defense, a couple things that we'll get to on the offense, but I can't remember a story like what Joe Andreessen was, in the sense of, Aaron and I we've been doing this for 6 years. I joke all the time. I'm I love the Bills more than anything. I'm not related to. I'm fairly obsessed with everything they have going on with the team. I knew he was on the 90-man roster. I knew he was from the area and from UB, and that he played linebacker. Oh yeah, like that was about the end of my knowledge of the young man.
Yeah.
And like those kind of stories are fun. Like I grew up with Josh Roth. He was, once Pine Valley, same idea, kind of practice squad, got a cup of coffee here or there, was really cool. I remember how fun that was in the moment. But those don't normally turn into starting a game, 12 tackles, that just, even guys breaking down the game, seeing all that was there. So with everything that you've seen, how much of that has been him taking advantage of the moment and the timing, and just, he happened to be the next man up and running with it, and maybe a little bit more the fans should sink their teeth into. I think everyone's kind of dialed back from the, running, starting positions and things like that. But someone that I don't know that I even saw as having a strong path at a practice squad spot to now, I think there's a debate of he could make the roster, and that's just a crazy leap for me. What have you been able to see, and what else can you share with everybody of what's behind just that one awesome preseason game?
I mean, there's a lot there that we can talk about, but I'll just start with, Joe. I will tell you, I called a couple of his games play-by-play for Spectrum News when he was playing at Lancaster High School, right? I mean, like, he played at the stadium. He was, for Lancaster, he was a linebacker, of course. He was actually one of the finalists for the annual Trench Trophy here in Buffalo for the best offensive or defensive lineman in Western New York. He played D-line. He had blocked 6 kicks, I believe, his senior year. He was the Wildcat quarterback for Lancaster High School. Okay, I mean, this kid was a phenomenal football player. The former Lancaster coach, legendary coach, Len Jankowitz, is a very dear friend of mine. Him and I actually do the games together now. He did not coach Joe. Eric Rupp coached Joe. So I just want to show you real quick. This was right after Joe had signed his contract, and Coach Jankowitz and Coach Rupp came to practice with a couple other former coaches. I took this picture. And this is amazing, right? How proud they are of him, right? I just think it's so cool to talk about the proud story. And those are all Lancaster High School coaches there. And the gentleman with the white on the end, that's Coach Jankowitz. The coach with the red cap is Coach Rupp, who's the current Lancaster High School coach. They're all friends of mine. And, through them, I've gotten to know Joe even more. And, I knew his story, but I've gotten to know Joe really well. I've gotten to know him and his family a little bit. And that day when he kind of showed up at Bill's rookie minicamp, he was one of a few guys that, they got Joe Andreessen. Oh, they got this, hey, I mean, Gable Steveson, right? I mean, you got like these guys who, had not either played football or just they're rookies. And he was a name because he went to UB, and then suddenly he signs a contract. And that's the first sign to me, like, okay, like they don't do that just to hand out contracts. Like they really felt that he had earned a 90-man roster spot. Okay. So, on your point, Greg, I agree with you about like thinking about him even making the practice squad. I'm going to say this. I'm pretty confident in saying I think Joe may have been one non-linebacker injury away from not even being on this team before the red and blue game. They had so many guys injured around the roster, and they were shaving off linebackers. Remember, Shane Simon got released.
Yeah.
And if someone at another position had gotten hurt, I'm of the belief, and I've reason to believe this, that I think Joe could have been the next guy out the door because they had linebackers. Well, what happened in that red and blue game was 2 linebackers got hurt. And all of a sudden it's like, okay, we need Joe for another week. And then he winds up playing against the Bears in the first preseason game. And then the Matt Milano situation happens. And then the Steelers thing happens, right? Which is
availability is
your best ability, right?
Yeah.
And we did a Zoom with Sean McDermott on Monday. And McDermott said, I love his answer when he was asked about him. He said, if you can find the ball, you can find the ball. That's what he said. I love that answer. Right? It's just so simple. He's a see ball, get ball guy, but he's super great at diagnosing, and I think that's really what's kind of separated him here. So, yeah, I mean, there's a lot there with Joe. It's a local story, but at this point, I don't care if he's from North Dakota. It's a football story, and he's a football player.
Yeah. But in a town like this, Sal, I mean, I think in your own right, you're a bit of a local high school football legend yourself. And to have a guy that went locally, sometimes that's easy to write off. We've seen guys come through UB or seen guys that had roots here, and it's easy to write off those home stories and stuff like that. But this type where it's undrafted, it's a guy kind of just trying to find a spot on the roster. How big of a thing is that when you're I'm not a local high school football guy. I don't know that kind of world. How big is that for a guy from Buffalo to have a shot to even be in this situation, to be even considered a bubble guy?
It's way bigger here than it is a lot of places because we don't get a lot of even D1 players out of here, Aaron. Buffalo has your share guys who go Division I. I mean, Marcus Harrison goes to St. Francis. He goes to Georgia this year as an O lineman. He's 6'8", right? I mean, that's a rarity. We don't have those kind of guys. The last few years, we've had a few guys go to Syracuse. Jameer Thomas is going there from Bennett this year. They had the Trench Trophy winner from a couple of years ago go there. But that's why it's special. It's not just because he's local. It's rare even for local kids to go D1, let alone get a shot in the NFL. And I will say,
and for your own team,
and then to be on your home team, right? Your own hometown team. But I will say about maybe it was 10 years ago, I was with Paul Peck standing there. I don't know if you guys know Paul, but he does UB games, and he was a Channel 4 sports director for many years. And Paul and I think it had to be maybe 7, 8, 10 years ago. And at that point, whenever that was, Paul said, Sal, I think there are more guys in the NFL from Buffalo than ever before. And we actually went through the list, we counted. And actually, Stephen Carlson of the Bears, who's a tight end, is from Jamestown. And I think they played against each other. There you go. I think him and Andreessen played against each other in high school. And now they're playing against each other on an NFL field. Obviously, there are other guys we could talk about, and Brett Kern from, the punter from Grand Island. There's been different guys, right? But
when I was coming through, Josh Thomas was at Orchard Park, ended up playing 6 years with the Colts. But the combination of staying here is pretty crazy.
So that's what makes it special, I think, Aaron. And the fact that it's his hometown team, he's right here, but it almost didn't happen. I think people have to realize too, Joe had a high level college career at a lower level program, of course, right, at Bryant University. Then he went to the University of Buffalo. He had 90 something tackles. A lot of people thought he'd get drafted. He didn't. It wasn't like he just kind of, hey, there's this guy on the streets, let's go see what he can do. He was a football player who people thought he could draft it. He wasn't. He had an incredible relative athletic score, as I'm sure you guys have seen and maybe talked about, right? 85th out of close to 3,000 linebackers since 1987. And the day before he was in Buffalo, he was trying out for the Kansas City Chiefs. He went to their camp. He went to their rookie camp. The Chiefs didn't sign him. Comes to Buffalo, they signed him.
Andy Reid, big mistake.
Maybe.
We'll put it to Brett Beach any way that we can. And
that's right.
When you come down to it, I had done workups previously, and Nick Morrow and Deion. At one point, I thought Deion Jones was the prototypical modern linebacker in the NFL. And both those guys either aren't at that stage of their career anymore or are battling staying on the field themselves. A lot of people had high expectations for Balen Spector being able to step in. Obviously, we've seen the gradual development of Dorian Williams. It's not like he's stepping into a space where there's, it's like Gable Stevenson coming in. There's a very defined starting group at defensive line. And even as the backups, that's a huge, battle to work your way through. When you remove Milano from that linebacker group, it's just Terrell Bernard and then a lot of projection. So with this path forward, do you think there is a realistic chance at a roster spot?
I do. As of right now, I might put him on the 53, but I think the bigger reason for me might simply be because of even circumstance. And that's not take away from Joe, of course, because of his play, right? But I mean, the main middle linebacker backup to Terrell Bernard is Balen Spector, and he hasn't played. I mean, he hasn't. And honestly, Balen's had some injuries here now over the last couple of years, but he hasn't been on the field. And then Nicholas Morrow, he's a guy that can back up Terrell Bernard. He's flexible, but He's just getting back now. I think really that's what makes it even much more of a chance for Joe Andreessen. I've heard a lot of people ask if he can play will linebacker. Look, he probably can. I think he can. The athleticism is there, but that's not where he's being trained right now. He started off at Will and Mike for the Bills for about a week or so, and then they moved him, or however long it was, they moved him strictly to Mike because, he's a rookie. He's got a lot on his plate. He's got to call the defense, and when you're the Mike linebacker, that's what you do. So he's only been training Mike. If you put him at Will now, you're kind of starting over, and there's a lot of new things you have to learn. So I think that he's in the spot he needs to be. And I think at this point, it comes down to what the availability is for Balen Spector. And look, guys, he didn't practice again today. We're talking here on a Wednesday, and Balen wasn't out there. I just wonder is Balen Spector like a serious IR candidate by next Tuesday? And if he is, then suddenly Joe Andreessen has a legit look at a roster spot.
On that, with a guy like Spector, you're there more than us. And I think it's tough for fans who don't get to see him because, again, availability is a great ability, especially this time of year. But would you say, all things even, the injury is not anything substantial? Have the Bills seen enough internally, not necessarily in games or anything like that, just internally? And have you heard, are they even like high on Balen Spector, or would they even, IR him, like you said, or just even bail on this project if you have a guy like Andreessen, who's sort of the same mold of what you were trying to get out of a Spector, a speedy linebacker that can play special teams? Like, how many of those guys do you need if you have hit on one?
I think they really, really like Balen Spector and what he brings to the defense. I think that let's go back 2 years ago, they actually did put him on IR, remember, and kind of gave him a redshirt year, right? His rookie season. I think if I remember correctly, that's kind of where he spent that year. And then he came back last year, and he was in and out. He wasn't like active a lot, but if you guys remember what happened in the playoffs, so they lose. They have Bernard Milano's obviously out, and remember they lost Tyrell Dodson. Right. For the Pittsburgh game, right? He got hurt. He hit against Miami, maybe in the end, but anyway, he got hurt there. Well, they didn't go to Dorian Williams. They went to Balen Spector, and Balen Spector actually started that game against the Steelers, and then he got hurt really early on. He hurt his back going for a fumble. But I think that showed you how much they really like about Balen Spector. And the thing they really like about him is he can play both sides. The Bills love guys who can be versatile. That they've trained him at both sides. But I do think that the injuries are starting to matter here to the Bills because that's right. Because they need guys available. And this has been kind of an ongoing theme a little bit with Balen Spector since he's been around. And if Joe Andreessen can go into the Carolina Panthers and come out of another game healthy, and Balen Spector sitting there 3 days away from, some roster decisions have to be made. Remember, you do get those two guys now you can put on IR at the end and still have them back. I just think he becomes a candidate for that. And then the other part about this is Nicholas Morrow. I mean, look, Nicholas Morrow had 100 tackles 2 years ago in Chicago, goes to Philadelphia, plays spot duty. Eagles fans will tell you, okay, whatever. They didn't really need to keep him. He's 29 years old. As much as he'd help the Bills as depth piece, aren't there guys like Nicholas Morrow kind of out there that you can find? And even a Nicholas Morrow himself, maybe, if you don't wind up, keeping him.
Well, I was going to actually take this off the rails a little bit, Greg, if you don't mind, and put it back to you, Sal, and that, like, we talk a lot about, there's going to be a lot of talk over the next week here or so about 53, the final 53. And like, even within a day or so of it being the final 53, it's going to be a different roster, right? This is going to be a roster that turns over all throughout the season. And these guys that we're discussing here on the bubble, more times than not, I'm sure some of them will go off to other practice squads and get claimed, but more times than not, there's going to be this group of guys that we're worried about not being able to come back. They're going to shift throughout this roster here this year. Do you think that's even more so with some of these injuries? Like, there's a lot to talk about the injuries right now with Buffalo, and obviously Milano's the big one, but then you have all these ones that are like, you have Cole Bishop in the red jersey kind of coming back, and Mike Edwards kind of coming back. And what's the timing on that look like?
MVS.
Curtis Samuel is a big one. Like, could it be week one? Will it be a couple more weeks? Like, some of these injuries are just kind of nagging enough right now to play with some of those bottom 53 spots just to fill that depth. But like, is this probably more so than other years that guys that are on the 53 are just kind of by circumstance a 53-man roster spot because the guy behind him needs a week or two more or 4 weeks or whatever?
Could be, especially because of that new rule, right? I mean, you get now, you don't have to carry the guy onto the regular season roster 53 and then put him on IR. So yeah, I do think that you could have one or two guys that, hey, we're going to keep this guy around because we have some injuries. Maybe that does happen at safety, right? It's not just the injury to Edwards and Bishop, it's their reps. I mean, are they ready to play? Are they ready to step on the field? Can you trust them to be out there week one? But maybe you have to keep somebody else where maybe one of these veterans who came in, for example, right? A Kareem Jackson. I'm just throwing something out where, okay, well, he can go out there and we know at least he's going to line up and understand what we're trying to do. And that matters here. The thing that like Andreessen, for example, one thing about him though is he now put this on film, right? So what happens is Brandon Beane has to think, if I release him, I'm not getting him back most likely. One of the 31 other teams is going to claim him, right? So now you have to play the game of who can I afford to do that with and who can I not afford to do that with.
Yep.
Balen Spector is subject to waivers. If you release him, you're probably not getting him back. I mean, he's a draft pick from a couple of years ago. He's played on a high level defense the last couple of years. Nicholas Morrow, he's a free agent. You can release him. He's not. He can choose to go where he wants to go and what if he wants to come back. Like that's the one position where, for example, these things are going to matter. And to your point, Aaron, yeah, I think that like to me, this year will be even more so of a roster churn because of a lot of it's because of the kickoffs and special teams and what's happening there and what you're going to try and figure out the kind of body types you need. But I think it's also because the Bills are kind of resetting financially. Being on a rookie contract and being young is really, really good for the Bills right now. Yeah. Maybe in years past, that was not something that would help you. I think this year it helps you.
Yeah, it's interesting the way that it's structured. There's a handful. Obviously, we've seen Reed Ferguson. His contract's almost set up like a cheat code that they don't guarantee his contract because they know that he'll go barbecue in the parking lot for a day and come back. They'll give him a little extra signing bonus when he comes back the day after. There aren't a lot of guys like that. There's a handful. You mentioned Morrow. Deion Jones is in a similar spot. If a guy like Will Clapp or Deshaun Williams, those are guys who are probably in that like 52 to 58 range of like, hey, are they going to make it or not make it? Those are guys who are also vested veterans who there's not a ton of guaranteed money out there. I know some people have brought that up with guys like Marquez Valdez-Scantling or Mitch Trubisky, but their contracts are guaranteed. So either you're releasing them because they're not going to be with the team or they would be the short-term IR guys. You don't release them and then sign them back because you'd be giving them all the guaranteed money and the new contract when you brought them back. So
and let's remember too that any vested veteran who's on the roster week one then becomes guaranteed for the year, right? I mean, so that's something you have to think about. That's like the Micah Hyde scenario, just for example. So people ask me about Micah Hyde, and I'm like, well, let's say you bring Micah Hyde in now. I mean, you're not going to pay him probably the minimum. You're going to pay him more than that. I think he's not going to play for that. But then if he's on your roster week one, you got to guarantee the salary. Well, as things go on, maybe you're feeling like, I don't know, like, is he still the same player? And
you might need that
Edwards and Bishop are playing well, and maybe you don't want to do that. So that's why I've always felt that's something you do later when you don't have to have that guarantee.
Yeah, he's definitely the break glass in case of emergency. Right. And I love the fact that they have that insurance policy sitting there. But I think both parties, I don't think he wants to do camp and do 18 games
and
of anything.
Such an emergency.
Halloween, maybe.
We've had an emergency and we still didn't break that glass. That's right. Like that's a big emergency.
Yeah, that's a good tell. That's a great point here. So we've talked a lot about the defense. There's, a couple other spots we can kick around, but one of them has been kind of a roller coaster. Keon Coleman, obviously he's been, everybody fell in love with the personality. It's such a likable character. The best part to me is it seems genuine. Like I get a lot of like Marshawn Lynch vibes of like, no, he's just that guy. Like he's not putting on anything. He's not acting for the camera. He's just a character and a fun guy. And you saw all the body control highlights and the going up over top and mossing people. Your description of the one where he went up over top of Elam and plucked it and pulled it back. Like I was reading through it and reading it to everybody the way that you described it. Those have been great. Now all of a sudden he gets into a game. You see him, kind of short arm it a little bit. He copped to it and said it was a drop. It was one where, I understandably kind of think he heard some footsteps of the other safety coming down, and now everybody's critical and everybody's frustrated and everybody's, getting there. What have you seen on a day-to-day basis from a skill set, from a habit standpoint of what maybe fans should expect versus really, I think people are kind of down on him after one bad rep in a preseason game.
He's still really learning the beginning of the down, right? He's really learning, and that's getting off the line of scrimmage. That's the main thing, right? I think he's still kind of feeling his way of how he needs to do that, how he wants to do that. And that's, I think, hurting him get separation down the field because he's not doing it like getting right into the route and beating someone off the line. But it's also not his game, right? We know that. We know it's not his game. And he's going to have to learn. He's going to have to do it better at the NFL level. But the times where he does do it, when he can get off the line clean, when he has a really good release, you're not beating him once he has any bit of step on you. And that's not because of his speed. It's because of his ability to catch any ball near him compared to you. Like he's going down the field and any ball that Josh Allen puts near him, he has so much of a better chance of catching. He has caught those balls. He has to get there first. That's the thing I see. He has to get there first. But once he gets there, he's making the catch 9 times out of 10 over you. Or, if you and him or one of you going to make the catch, it's him 7 or 8 times, you 2 or 3 times. Yeah. He had a catch in practice today, actually, which was like this, which just kind of what you described a little while ago, Greg, which, believe it or not, like he caught the ball and he did a great job of getting his feet down. And that's what Thad Brown looked at me and said. And Thad goes, look, the catch was great. He goes, I don't know how he got his feet in. Like he did it so smoothly. And that's what it is.
Body control in the highlights. That's
right.
The stuff that gets me every time I see the highlights.
It's effortless. He knows where he is on the field. He plays his, actually people always say you play bigger than you are. He plays smaller than he is when he has the ball in his hands to come down with it. Right. He knows he's not clunky in any way. Right. He knows that he's got to tap and get in. Anyway, that's what I see from him. This happened in Pittsburgh. We're watching one-on-ones against the Steelers in that practice. The first 2 reps, first one, he was covered pretty well. It was an overthrow either way. Second one, I think Joey Porter Jr. just had him. He couldn't do anything. And then the third one, I don't remember who he's going against. I think it was Darius Rush. He gave him one slight move. Darius Rush didn't react well enough, and he just beat him, and there was no chance. Rush just had no chance, and Josh put it on him, and he made the catch. That's what I love about him, but you got to get him there first.
Yeah. On that too, like the other side of this is he came out with the personality, and I think everybody bought into the idea of Keon Coleman, especially with you lost Stephon Diggs. I think the fan base is desperately seeking somebody to be a number 1 type. We had a lot of conversation about what were they going to do in the draft. Are they going to trade up to get a true number 1? So a lot of hype has been cast on him before he even took a snap. But football is a game that is a small sample size game, even throughout the season, right? The course of the season. And the thing is, this guy's played 50 preseason snaps so far. What would if you were to like pull back the fan side and talk to people and say, we know players take time to develop. Look at Greg Rousseau, right? Entering where he's at, like I think he's about to ascend and get himself a big contract. We're talking about a guy that wasn't necessarily a first round pick, right? He didn't have first round grades from everybody. What is the real development process for a guy this late, a second round pick type player? Is it a come in 1 year and be gangbusters and turn into T. Higgins, or is it a 2 to 3 year process where he becomes the guy that maybe we expect him to be?
Well, I think first of all, Aaron, you're asking a lot to tell any fan to be patient, right? I mean, fans don't want to be patient, and it's the way it is. It's the same thing with, I remember, I think you guys would agree with me when I said this. Like I was getting frustrated on draft night because so many people thought if Cole Bishop doesn't start right away, he's a bust. Like what are we doing here? Like that's not what happens. It's not how it works, right? You have to develop. But I think the answer to your question, Aaron, really lies more in like the organization and the process of development, right? The Bills are very, very, they're a process-oriented organization. I don't mean to say that with a pun with Sean McDermott, but they're about developing the player and not putting that player in a position where, he is expected to perform right out of the gate. Now, if they do, great. But people say all the time, McDermott doesn't play rookies. That's not true. He plays rookies. Christian Benford started as a rookie, right? I mean, like that happened just because Kaiir Elam
played every snap.
He played every snap. That's exactly right. But you better be ready to play. And once you're there, you're not considered a rookie. What happened on James Cook's first ever NFL touch? He fumbled the ball and didn't see the field for a while, right? I mean, like those are things that happen. So I think to the fans, like my message would be that, which is you don't get drafted with a 1-year contract. You get drafted with a 4-year contract. And there's a reason for that. And the Bills aren't expecting Keon Coleman to go out there and be their number 1 leading wide receiver. He's going to play a lot. They're going to lean on him, no doubt about it. And he's going to be expected to make plays. But you got to give it a little time. Everybody develops that a little bit differently. In this organization, look what they've done with, think about the names. I mean, Josh Allen comes right to mind, right?
Ed Oliver's one that pops up in terms of draft and develop.
I'll give you. How about Terrell Bernard last year? How many of us were sitting here if you go back to August 21st of last year, how many fans and media are like, I have no idea if Bernard can play, and I don't know why they're using this really small guy at middle linebacker. Really, this is not gonna go well.
Yeah.
I mean, look what happened the first start he ever had, the game against the Jets when he played will linebacker for Matt Milano. It did not go well.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
I was terrified with Spencer Brown last year, and that was his third season going into it. Sometimes guys
Taron Johnson a couple of years. Now he's an all-pro.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, so I think Keon Coleman has an opportunity here to make some big plays on this offense. I think that the expectations for him will really go by more of, hey, if this offense is putting up points and other guys are catching the ball, people won't really care if he's not as much. But if they're not and he's not, then all of a sudden you're going to get a lot of ire from fans going his way.
Here, can I steal one more for Sal while we got him real
Yeah.
quick? On that same kind of line of development and stuff, one guy that has caught the ire of fans is Kaiir Elam in that development and the story of Kaiir Elam. And some of this is an interesting one to me because a lot of success in the draft, I think, ends up where you're drafted at, what situation you come into, right? And Kair's situation is very interesting, and he's sort of coming into a clean slate now in terms of the coaching staff and believing in him and the style that they would like to play. But you're coming in with Rasul Douglas, who's playing very good into this defense. He's a vet. He's not going anywhere. And Christian Benford, who has really become cornerback 2 and really solidified that job. Where is Kair's development, and like at what point do the Bills sort of have to move on from that, or is he even going to get a chance to hit that development with the kind of gridlock ahead of him right now?
Yeah, it's a great question. Look, I'll tell you, and I don't want to sit here and say like, oh my God, it doesn't matter if guys aren't very good for the first 2 years. You got to give everyone patience. Like at this point, Kaiir Elam should be playing more and contributing more than he has. At this point, there's no doubt about that. That just hasn't happened, and there's been circumstances for that. I think there's a lot of evidence that maybe him and his position coach, John Butler, just didn't see eye to eye, right? I think we kind of can figure that out. And we can all know that for whatever reason that is. It doesn't have to be anybody's fault. It just happens in this
workplace.
Right. Yeah. And that's right. And he's got Jamil Adai now. And I think he feels really comfortable with him and Bobby Babich as his defensive coordinator. Look, he got beat out by a 6th round pick the same year that he was a 1st round pick. And Christian Benford is the definition of basically consistency. Like he's never going to be super flashy and get all these numbers. He's not Sauce Gardner, but he is when it comes to like
perfect McDermott corner.
Yeah, exactly. He's going to do his job. Yeah. So he has earned it and he deserves it. They don't trade for Rasul Douglas if Kaiir Elam develops the way he's supposed to develop. Let's be honest, right? They don't even do it. They don't have to do it because he's out there and he's playing where he's supposed to play. That being said, now I think he's put together a really solid camp. I think the Bills would like him to be a little bit more physical in the run game. That's a very big component. Setting the edge, being physical. I think he's tried to step that part of his game up, obviously. But he's made some plays when he's been in there. I think also what helps right now is for that group, I just got to throw his name out there because I've been on him for 2 years. I'm so happy. Jamarcus Ingram. I've been telling everybody about Jamarcus.
Pumped the brakes on him. So good on you. I have been pumping the brakes.
I've been telling about Jamarcus Ingram for 2 years. I really loved his game. And I think that's also, in a way, it's helped because it's insulated Kaiir a little bit to not have to have that, but it's also hurt him because is this another guy, an undrafted free agent now that's passing him now and again? Because it very well could be. I think Kaiir Elam is firmly in the top 4. There's no doubt. I don't think that they're eager to say, oh my God, this isn't going to work this year. But at this
point, running out of time.
Exactly. For him to be a solid everyday contributor.
Yeah. At some point, the contract does have a term, and we're only in year 3. There's plenty of time left. You have no idea what could happen. Ideally, he's, where he's playing so well, he's pushing for playing time now, and they don't need to extend Rasul Douglas because they feel like, hey, we have him ready to go. But if that's not the case, there is only 1 more year left on his contract, and all of a sudden now you're talking about a guy who is going to be worried about that. You get into those concerns of, is he getting the playing time to show himself? And does that become something where they push for a move somewhere else? We have seen them, kind of admit to themselves when something's not a fit. We've seen them trade Cody Ford. We've seen them trade Zach Moss. We've seen them, make other moves of, legitimate day 1, day 2 draft investments and be able to say, hey, this is just what's best for all parties involved. So I don't, again, I'm not
Boogie Basham.
Yeah. Perfect example. I'm not predicting that that's the case here, but if someone asks me like, hey, who is a possible trade candidate here before cutdown day? he'd be on my list. Like he'd be one of the names
Yeah, listen,
I would have.
Hardy
think
also
for
playing
everything-
well on the outside doesn't help that cornerback's
Yeah,
room looking
Hardy's
pretty
playing
fun.
outside
That's a
reps
good point.
too.
Listen, I agree with you, Greg. I think the question would be though, if you divulge yourself from and divested yourself from Kaiir Elam, what do you have on the outside? Because Aaron makes a good point. If Daquan Hardy, that's what you said was Hardy, right?
Yeah.
If Daquan Hardy can continue to, show that he can actually handle the boundary, I think that becomes a little bit more of a discussion. But right now, I don't know, and that
It's
looks a little.
early.
He's
Yeah.
5'9", 185, and can he really do it in NFL games? But I think it's a great point. Last year at this point, we were all talking about, is Kaiir Elam a trade candidate? Is Kaiir Elam a trade candidate? I think the Bills just really wanted to see it through, they're still here today, and they're still wanting to see it through.
So thank you, Sal. You've been very generous with your time here tonight. Let the folks know what's coming up next on It's Always Game Day in Buffalo with the extra point. You're everywhere nowadays. What's coming up next?
Yeah, I mean, you got trying to keep up all you guys. That's what we're trying to do. Every day, obviously, WGR Sports Radio 550, and that is 10 to 12 every day. But I'm covering practice these days, so usually have somebody sometimes covering the show for me. Always Game Day in Buffalo, Matt Bove and me, and we just did another episode today. I was driving back, so I had to pull over. I was actually in the commercials for that airport kiosk, and they have the weird jingle and all that. I was literally in the airport kiosk at that center there where the airport kiosk is with the jewelry and all that. And that's where I did my spot today for It's Always Game Day. And that's at the Sal Sports YouTube page. So go there, everybody, and can check that out. And Sal Sports is all the social handles.
Awesome. Hey, every year you guys are watching this, you can find Sal. Make sure you go over and check out Sal Sports YouTube page where you're watching us right now. Thank you for your time. This has been awesome, Sal. Hopefully we're able to have you on again soon. But if not, go Bills.
Yeah, you got it, guys. Have a great season. We'll catch up soon.
We'll see you soon,
Appreciate
Sal.
it, man.
Thanks, man.
You got it.
Always one of my favorite guests to be able to
Yeah, I
talk
love
about.
having
Sal's
Sal on.
awesome to be able to go and obviously having the passion for the team and for everything that he does. He's always one that I love, that he doesn't hide the fact that he wants the team to do well. Like, it's still his occupation and everything that he does, but I think he walks that line as well as anybody that I've seen, and being able to still be excited for everything that's going on while still being there as an employee and having the reporting responsibilities to be as unbiased as possible in that coverage. I love the way that he approaches it.
Yeah, he proves that you can actually be a fan and be a reporter. You just can't cheer while you're at the game. It's like the only thing. He does it. Yeah, it's fine. And he does it. Yeah, I love it. I bump into Sal actually quite a bit here throughout Western New York. Every once in a while, I'll bump into him, or we went and played golf. And just a great guy.
Some of your kids are similar age. I think Max is just a little bit older.
A little bit older. So yeah, we've crossed paths through like floor hockey. A couple of years we were crossing paths and stuff. So it's always good to see him. And he's genuine. He's always the same energy. And yeah, I love just off the cuff. Same thing. We just link up and start chatting Bills, and we should just record live right there when we do it, because it is good talk. It's always good talk, Sal.
So, our friends over at William Mattar Law Offices, they've been awesome to us. And as Sal shared a lot with us here, I'm going to put you on the spot first. Anything with I think you did a pretty good job at dialing it back with Keon and trying to help people understand we don't need him necessarily to be a number one receiver day one. We have Khalil Shakir, Curtis Samuel, and I think all of us think Dalton Kincaid is going to lead the team in
targets and
in targets.
Yeah.
But the one that I keep catching myself on is, I'm adamant each year about like, hey, not that many guys get claimed that we think. We're always fearful that, we can't release him because he's going to get claimed. I got to tell you, I don't know if we can release Joe Andreessen. Like, I don't honestly know. I kind of think that the reason I say that is not that he was, so amazing that just every team would want to claim him. It's the idea that when it's a small school guy, he only played 1 year at a MAC school. So like he played at a lower level and then at a MAC school, and then didn't have a combine invite, had to do the regional combine setup. Like I don't think that the 31 other teams didn't know he existed. Obviously they did. I have respect for what they go through. I don't think he was like thoroughly vetted by 31 other teams. I don't know that he had like the full draft workup by every single other team. And I do think there's an element of like, oh, and you see, Anthony and I talked about it in the post-game show. A lot of times these like, aw shucks, home team stories are like try hard guys that actually aren't like the caliber of athlete necessary to do it. He's not. He's actually an exceptional athlete and someone who is exceptional even by NFL standards. They'll reference it like the 83rd highest out of 3,000 linebackers. He's like a 9.37 our relative athletic score. I just wonder, like, you look at some of the rough teams that are in bad shape on their defense with, Washington and Carolina and New England. And there's just a lot of teams that 4 years of rookie contract control for an athletic guy that is going to translate. And your worst case scenario is, well, he's just linebacker 5 and can play special teams. That's your worst case scenario on some of those bad teams. I'm now the guy that I yell at every time this time of year. I don't think we can release Joe Andreessen.
Yeah, I don't know. It's tough for me because, like, honestly, I think there's a lot of Joe Andreessens out there, and just even what guys that maybe aren't putting on the production necessarily, but are putting tape out there, and that teams are also concerned about losing. And so I think there's still that amount of mix of like, there's a lot of guys that teams are also concerned that they're going to cut and lose and want to get back already that they've invested in. Like, you work in the business of onboarding people, that costs time and money. Yeah. And like, there's part of what the Bills do. Like, when I'm looking at this roster, I almost look at it as you've got like the regular roster, like the game day roster. Then you've got that little bit of buffer for your like total active roster. Then you have the buffer of the practice squad. But all these guys that have been in training camp are continuous like buffer of who they would ideally, right, like to keep in this building. And I do think, I think this conversation might be a little bit moot just due to the injury nature of the position of linebacker. I think that he might just fall into a happenstance of making this team. But in terms of, I'm not in the place where I think, I don't know. I guess I haven't followed the rest of the NFL's bubble as closely as
Chris, pull back up TP's comment about the claim. He's spot on. So I've done the math and gone through and shown everybody the numbers. The number of players that get claimed, it's below 3% league-wide. It's a low number. However, it's 1 year it'll be 18 guys that get claimed. 1 year it'll be 13 guys. 1 year it'll be 20 guys. Sure. And when you talk about 1,000 people are getting released, it's a small percentage overall. So many get released. The vast majority get all of their own guys back on the practice squad and don't have to worry about it. Weirdly, the second part of his comment is spot on. The Bills do have a really weird stretch here of, out of all the guys that get claimed, we have more than the normal proportion over the last 5 or 6 years. Yeah. We've had more guys claimed than the average team. So we have, we saw Jack Anderson and Rashad Wild Goose, and I wish Chris Janke, the guy that we always interact with on online, this is like his wheelhouse of knowing every single guy that all the practice squad claimed.
I would like to bring up a counterpoint here is that like we don't care about any of those people you just mentioned, and we couldn't even name one of them.
Jack Anderson's playing really, really well for the Colts.
Sure, but we don't.
There's a chance Jack Anderson's going to be better than David Edwards this year.
Okay, maybe, I don't know. But I'm not, I just think every year I watch Hard Knocks, there's a team on Hard Knocks that has like a Joe Andreessen. He might not be a local guy that's from their area or whatever, but some guy that is just like, you fall in love with him and he has a good game and then he ends up getting cut and back on the practice squad is like the ending of the Hard Knocks season. I'm not saying that he can't. I actually think I have him making the roster in my 53 man, but I think that's because the Bills can also play some interesting games with the roster and you can move on from, like we were talking about, one of these guys like a Morrow or somebody like that, where you can go get those guys back. A Will Clapp, right? Like you can get rid of a Will Clapp and go get a Will Clapp back. That's not going to be a big deal. If you're even concerned about, we don't want to expose Andreessen. We have the spot with the linebacker, so we can easily get him in there. And we got some guys that we would like to bring back that will easily be able to do it.
I apologize. I was wrong on the Anderson thing. He was set up to start before Carolina went out and spent $1 bajillion on Robert Hunt. So he's probably going to be a backup in Carolina. But he was set up. He would have been the guy that would have started.
Sure.
Yeah, and you know, has played well. Is
I'm happy. I'm sorry, Jack. I didn't mean any disrespect.
Yeah, there will be no Jack Anderson slander.
Yeah.
But no, you're right. There's a lot of guys, and honestly, you know, if everyone is healthy, I don't know that there's a huge difference between Andreessen versus Bale Inspector versus what's this version of Nick Morrow or this version of Deion Jones. Like, I think that I think it's awesome for him that I just said that I just rattled off like 3 or 4 NFL linebackers and said that he's the same as them. But from a cold calculated side of things is that like, yeah, there probably isn't a huge difference. Or like, I don't, as excited as it was to see him, I don't know that there's some like burgeoning superstar there, but you never know. That there can be development and fun things that come from it. We've had surprises before, and we've seen, you know, guys make surprising advancements before. But yeah, I'm in a position where I agree with you that I think regardless of maybe what would have happened, and Sal sees more than we do, and he shared that, you know, we were probably really close to him being released off the roster, and it would have been at that point prior to seeing him in either of the games. It would have been like, oh man, that was cool. I'm glad he got a shot to be on the team for the summer. Like that was just a nice story. Now it's to the point where when you put that up on film and you're that young and that cheap, man, those are the kind of guys that do often get claimed.
Yeah, and with the new special teams rules, like it would be a guy you were happy to keep. Like you can, there is a role for a Bale Inspector and Andreessen on this team. So the more physical, athletic special teams linebackers you can bring on, Sean McDermott's going to love that. So I'm all for that. If I might need you to pump my brakes if you're ready. If you want to do that for a second. So while I was gone, I was catching up on some of the media here over the past week, and apologize. And I'm getting excited because I'm about to talk a little bit about Khalil Shakir, and I heard a Matt Collins interview with Chris Long, and he was talking about Khalil Shakir and just like, this guy does everything right. Like he's one of the best.
I listened to that interview.
Yes, this guy's going to be one of the best. Like he's awesome. And then the way the Bills have covered Shakir, the way Josh Allen talks about Shakir, the way Joe Brady talks, everybody's he does everything exactly right. We heard in Josh Allen's recent press conference. Am I going crazy? Like, is Khalil Shakir about to explode onto the scene, especially with the Curtis Samuel injury?
I do
have to plug my computer back in, but I can hear you.
I do think that there's he has very much kind of fallen under the radar and has been in a position where, you know, Khalil Shakir had all of the advanced metrics, all of the, you know, positive efficiency pieces for success rate and EPA and everything. And people like Aaron obviously were very, very excited coming into this season and being in a position where like, hey, we might have something. And then we signed Curtis Samuel. And I think a lot of the buzz around Dalton Kincaid kind of took hold of what the expectations and what the fans, you know, were focused on. And then you add in that Keon Coleman was this media darling with all the fun, you know, goofy stuff and all the different pieces there. And the whole time Khalil Shakir was just there putting in work and just doing all the things. And when that interview, and for anybody that doesn't listen to it, Chris Long, his podcast is fantastic. It's one of my favorite ones. Yeah. One of the best conversational podcasts is Chris Long and like 3 of his buddies. They do, I think it's called Greenlight is the name of the podcast. It's one of my favorites to listen to. I now download and listen. You know, I probably listened to at least half of the episodes. It's really, really good. He just did a run with Matt Collins, with Josh Allen, and with Jim Kelly. So it's a really, really good stretch to go check out for anybody who wants to get a feel for what the show is like. And when you hear someone like Matt Collins, who I don't think Matt Collins throws around a ton of like just loosey-goosey praise, and has been around and seen a lot of different guys. And Chris Long did not ask about Khalil Shakir. He did not bring up that name. And he gave a couple examples where he was talking trash to the defense, saying he's doing the same thing every time. When are you guys going to stop it? Yeah. When are you guys going to, like, you're just going to let him score a touchdown every single time? And he joked and said, and he did. He just kept scoring a touchdown every single time because they couldn't stop him. Maybe there's a reason to be excited about
Yeah.
this. I'm gonna roll the dice here. I'm now 49 minutes into this episode. I'm gonna trust that the other 11 guys in my fantasy league that I'm drafting with on Saturday morning are not listening at this point. Most of them are Browns fans, so that's why I feel confident in it.
Oh yeah.
I am taking Josh Allen with the number 1 pick in the fantasy draft, and I
Okay,
am 100% going to try to take Khalil Shakir as my handcuff to him. Unfortunately, Dalton Kincaid's already kept by a jerk in my league named Dave. Dave's a jerk. So I'm going to try to handcuff it and try to stack, as they call it, as the kids like to call it. I'm going to try to stack Josh Allen and Khalil Shakir in that.
I think
league
in that
morning.
same interview, Hollins even had alluded to the chemistry that he and Josh they are just locked in together. And then again later on, when Chris Long asked him who were like the sleeper wide receivers in the NFL, like people are sleeping on, he had to stop. He's like, well, you mean outside of my boy Shakir, right? Like, and so, yeah, the way I've seen the Bills media embedded be around Shakir, again, Brady talking about like he just does everything right. When you hear the coach saying that, and you hear the quarterback speaking of him saying like he's chasing down people, looking to make a block, doing everything right, putting it all right on film, all that shows me is ascension. Like, I just see a player that we haven't, maybe, I think, in a small scale, talking about small sample size, we've seen the ceiling of what a Khalil Shakir can look like, because it's the most like efficient wide receiver play maybe ever in a small sample size. But I think that people were wondering, can we extrapolate that over a bigger sample size? And I don't think you can get that level of efficiency, but I do think that we can move our expectations up a little bit. That could be closer to that, and he could be a legit weapon.
I mean, I shared, if you do the math and look at the level of efficiency early on versus a third year jump, that's what Amon-Ra St. Brown did. Amon-Ra St. Brown was one of the most efficient guys in the league on a smaller sample size. And everyone said, well, but if you give him that much volume, he can't possibly keep up at that efficiency level. And then he did.
Most guys don't.
He had
Most guys
1,300 yards in an insane season that he did. So, again, I think that's unfair. I'm not expecting that kind of season and an Amon-Ra St. Brown type jump for Khalil Shakir, but that is what happened. It was that kind of efficiency for 2 seasons, and then that third season was just an explosion at that next level to be able to do that. And I do think I have at least adjusted. So Sophia here talking about Kincaid and Shakir. That's where I was going. I think I had it as Kincaid up here, and then the 3 receivers kind of lumped together, but down significantly below Kincaid. And that, sometimes it would be Shakir, sometimes it would be Samuel, maybe later in the season it would be Coleman, but they're in a group here. And I now think it is Kincaid and Shakir, and then Samuel and Coleman. And
I actually think it's Samuel and
those 2.
Hollins.
Oh, I do think. I don't think that's crazy, and I do think Hollins will have way more snaps than people think, and it will be those 3. I think Coleman is a part of what they're doing.
Oh, no, for sure. Yeah.
But I don't think that's crazy that it's up here is Kincaid and Shakir, and then it's Samuel, Coleman, Hollins, and the 3 of them together there. Maybe even more Knox than people think.
Yeah, no, I do think so.
Like Knox,
I think you can throw Cook
in a group before.
Cook
Yeah, like it.
Pop.
That and that's where it can really change. That, hey, some games there's a lot of 2 tight end looks. Some games there's a lot of other pieces. I think you can see more of that floating around to be able to do it. But I do think that rightfully Shakir has maybe separated himself a little bit, and for a minute there, and we'll see. Maybe I'm wrong. I do think there's a defined role for Curtis Samuel and some scheme touches that are going to be a part of what we do. But I think Shakir could maybe be in for even a little bigger season than what we expect.
Yes. And I think Shakir can do some of that stuff. And I think I was listening to Greg Cosell. Again, if you're going to listen to like one person talk on WGR besides Sal or some of our friends, Greg Cosell on Friday afternoons, I think, on One Bills Live is like the best listen, in my opinion, in all content. And he was going in on that like same thing. He was spitting about Khalil Shakir being like, yeah, Samuel won't be gone. And that's going to be short term, right? Like, I think most expectations are he's going to be back early in the season. And I think you have the 2 of them who can do those things. And everybody's worried about Keon Coleman's like separation ability. You got Curtis Samuel and Khalil Shakir. Like I'm not worried about guys' ability to separate. Like Coleman a lot of times is going to be the third look anyway in these looks. So
here I'll give people a tidbit of why you should sign up for the One Pass Discord channel. Besides getting to interact and hang out with me and Aaron and Eric
even
and
more
Anthony and all the other guys, we're going to be doing even more. So I think Aaron might be bringing back some of the what used to be Friday morning spaces. Maybe some
Aaron
of that
and
will be
Greg.
Discord. Aaron has talked me into maybe even doing some post show discussions after we wrap up here, being able to jump in there and have some fun with the folks in Discord. Eric dropped a nugget for us in there that he heard that Curtis Samuel would be fine for week 1. So there you go. You get to find out some nice little tidbits as those things happen. So obviously, there's a lot of different reasons to go in there. The community is awesome. All the people in there are fantastic. If you just want to find out the best way to be able to support us, that is the best way to be able to support us. But there's also some little nuggets there. Eric and Anthony will show when they're doing the film breakdowns and kind of walk you guys through it and give you some insight into what they're looking at. And again, all those players that come on the show, some of those relationships remain, and we're able to share some information of what's in there. And Eric's always very gracious with that when he finds out little nuggets for everybody. So one thing there to feel good about. We heard that Curtis Samuel will be good to go for week 1. So hopefully that stays the same.
Yes, please.
All right. Anything else for the people here? Anything else? Give me one surprise name that you think doesn't make the roster and one that does.
Wait, we did not agree to this.
I know. I'm putting you on the spot.
Let's see here.
And I'll go first. If I'll give you a chance to think about it. One release that I think will surprise people. I think we could see maybe a name. We have a lot of really good offensive and defensive linemen. I think that's always a really tough one. But I think some of the buzz that built around some of the wide receiver names, I think a lot of people have assumed that like Terrell Shavers and KJ Hamler, have put themselves into a level where it's more for sure that's there. I think only one of them makes it. I think MVS goes on IR, and I think it could be Terrell Shavers.
I think it's Shavers.
I think Hardy beat out KJ Hamler. So I don't know if that'll be a surprise for many people or someone like Frank Gore, who's been a fun story. I think he's going to have to be on the practice squad. And then maybe somebody who's a surprise to make it. Obviously, Andreessen is everybody's.
I was going to say Andreessen could be the surprise both ways, I think.
Yeah. Some people would be shocked if he got released and go that way. And some people would be shocked if he made it.
There was a minute where maybe it was like the Zach Davidson, Quentin Morris tight end 3 thing, but
Davidson was going to be my surprise. Davidson was going to be my surprise to make it.
Morris looks pretty locked in at tight end 3 though. No.
Not that Morris is going to not make the roster.
Go 4?
In that, I think they have to keep 4 because I don't think he's going to be ready to play.
Oh.
I don't think he's going to, and I don't know that it's long enough that it's 4 weeks.
You can't just
of
get
IR.
William.
Correct. In that it's, I think maybe it's there. And you also could release Davidson and do practice squad call-ups for 2 games. And then if Morris is ready for week 3, you're good to go. So there are options there, but I do think, I don't know how many IR spots we're going to have. We're going to use all of them, and we can get a third one by doing the Reed Ferguson, barbecue fundraiser for him hanging out. But I think we have more than, Milano, Trubisky, MVS, Quentin Morris. We have more than 3. There's more than 3 spots of where those things might need to go. Oh, Sal threw out another name I wasn't even counting while we were talking. Darn it. Maybe Spectre. He talked about Spectre needing to go on IR. So that's 5 names of guys that are out there. Like we already have more spots. So someone is going to be on the 53 and just game day inactive because we have to have 5 game day inactives anyways. So, I mean, it's not like you have to have somebody game day inactive. So Quentin Morris is the guy to me that I could see just making the 53, and they would have probably put him on IR, but we already used up a bunch of our spots. And that's the reason Davidson might make it, because I do think we have a lot of expectation of running 12 personnel and a lot of multiple tight end sets.
Yeah, I don't see a ton of surprises. I would go that route makes sense, like roster nuance wise. Cam Lewis has some guaranteed money, right?
Yeah.
He's not going anywhere.
No. And
I didn't know if like
I think
Hardy,
Jamarcus Ingram's almost worked beyond the surprise. I now kind of think he's going to be one of the 4 cornerbacks.
well, so that's my only thinking here would be is like you've got a bit of a logjam because of the injury situation at safety, with like everybody kind of coming back and seeming like they might be ready, but not ready to actually play, and so you got some of that logjam. And
so does a
then
Jackson or Burgess or Delaney force themselves?
I don't know here. And then Hardy's sort of, I think I've got him making a roster spot potentially.
I think he's won the return job.
I think he's got the return job, and that he's shown enough in that he can play defense in the NFL, and so that you could be the return plus something else potentially in terms
More
of
than
depth.
the
I'm not saying
more than the Matakevich and Taiwan Jones level,
more than
where
he
you were
was
only
expected as like
I thought he was returner only.
Yes, at that size we were told, and he's shown that he can play football in the NFL. So I think that he's earned that spot. And so there's just, you're getting a bit of a logjam at defensive back, and his Cam Lewis's utility knife, like not jack of all trades, master of none, is going to start to wear out down the depth if Ingram is a pretty good boundary corner and Hardy can do some of that stuff as he develops. I could just see Lewis, like right now, Lewis's benefit to this roster is that he can take over for Taron Johnson in a pinch. He can also
nickel,
maybe
he
play
can do
safety.
he could do
and he's a
special
good
teams.
special teamer. Yeah.
But it is that he checks a lot of boxes as kind of covering multiple spots, not that he's necessarily has the upside beyond that for anything.
Yeah.
And maybe there is, like, Jamarcus Ingram is a huge dude for a corner. Like, he's a really, really big guy. Like, that offers a lot. Andy, they're bringing up Lyle Collins. I don't agree with him, but that would be a surprise.
That would be.
I think Collins is going to make it, but that would be a surprise. He'll qualify.
I had some debate. I think it will be Collins because of how easy a Will Clapp would be to bring back if you need him. But I won't lie, in doing like 53 stuff, like that's a debate in my head going back and forth of who's going to be
there's
number 10.
8 locked in spots. So obviously your 5 starters, Vandemark, Anderson, and Van Pran Granger. Like, those 3 are locked in.
Yeah.
Those 8 are there.
That's how I got it too.
Then I think Lyle Collins is 9 for me. And then I have Will Clapp versus Tylan Grable versus not keeping 10. So
I put Grable in.
Yeah. So that is the debate for me. I think Collins is pretty firmly locked in that 9. And then if they keep 10, I'd understand if it was Clapp. I think it would make more sense to be Grable, but whatever. You can go, again, Clapp is a guy you could get back as the veteran on the practice squad. Grable has to go through waivers. You always run the risk. A 6th round pick. Was he somebody else that was valued as a draft pick? You never know. I do think that's there. I think Collins is firmly on the roster, but I don't think it's a lock by any chance. I do have him in that. I have him on mine.
I think it's fine.
I have those top 8 as locks.
Yeah. What's your defensive line looking like in your?
So I've got it as obviously the top 4. So Rousseau, Daquan, Ed Oliver, Epinesa, then Dwayne Smoot, very clearly, Austin Johnson, I think very clearly Dwayne Carter, Von Miller. Those 8 are all there. I think it's Javon Solomon, and that might be it.
That's all I got.
I like Deshaun Williams has some really nice versatility.
I think he'll be back on the practice squad.
He would be a priority for me to get back on practice squad. I'd even throw him like a little extra money.
I think
if we're allowed to do that. Eli Ankou, I want back as on the practice squad.
Kingsley Jonathan, Nate, probably.
I would love Kingsley Jonathan back on the practice squad. I totally get it if he went somewhere else that he thought he had a clearer path to the roster. Because I think now Javon Solomon kind of took his spot role per se. Casey Tuho, I think, is an easy practice squad veteran addition. And it's nice where, Casey Tuho, Eli Ankou, Deshaun Williams, those are 3 NFL caliber players to have as just like insurance policy call-ups from the practice squad.
They'll probably play this year.
I agree. The defensive line is such a, violent position. Having 9 guys that I really like and 3 insurance policies there without Kingsley Jonathan. If we had Kingsley Jonathan included, you're talking about, having 13 guys that I feel good about playing. That's wild. And I think that makes everything behind them so much easier this season. I feel the best about the defensive line for the Bills I have in six seasons.
Oh yeah. I was making strong claims about the front seven. I think with Milano injury, it definitely takes a hit, but that line, I still
Oh,
feel as confident as ever. And then one more here I want to get to at least before we get out is we never formally made a bet, but we talked here when we were wrapping up our roster stuff about you had a guy that you said was definitely going to make the roster, and I had a guy that I thought was going to make the roster over him, but we didn't formally make a bet, so I'm not going to hold you to the bet, but we could. I at least want to say that it looks like maybe you were wrong about D Delaney. Do you have him making your 53?
I don't.
He had a tough summer. He got in a
I've
tough
already
spot.
admitted
Yeah.
defeat. I do think the opportunity was in it. I think it's
I
very
think he's a
similar
practice
to
squad guy too.
like Nick Morrow.
Yep.
He's a guy that I like, but if you can't stay on the field, it doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
So I like D Delaney. I think he had a path to this roster, but I think the development from Jamarcus Ingram, the play of Daquan Hardy, the fact that they were forced to go out and get a Kareem Jackson, Terrell Burgess insurance policy type guy was just way too much there. So I felt really good about it when he was signed. I thought he was a super sneaky
He's a
addition.
fit.
He had a ton of versatility. He literally played. He had three seasons in a row where the position he played the most snaps at was different all 3 seasons. He played outside corner, nickel, and safety in 3 different seasons, plus playing a ton of special teams all 3 of those years. He just checks so many boxes for what this team looks for, but if you can't stay on the field, it doesn't matter. So I'll be happy if they can sneak him back on practice squad, but it is what it is. He's missed his window. So
I think
at a
he'll be a
minimum,
practice.
I owe you some chicken wings.
I think he'll be a practice squad guy. I do. I think because of the injuries and not being able to stay on the field, I don't think there's going to be a ton of suitors coming after him. I think he's a perfect fit for this scheme and for this defense. But I had to rib you a little bit, and DeMar exceeded my expectations. I think 100%. This summer, not staying healthy right now currently is part of this health crisis of the Bills.
Yeah,
but
add him to the list of guys. But also, I think he went from debatable of roster status to now a crystal clear roster lock.
Yes. Yeah. Love that for him.
Nope, you won that one for sure.
Hey, broken clocks.
All right, guys. This has been a ton of fun. We will be here. Obviously, you'll have all the guys leading you right up. Cut down day for anyone who's aware. It is Tuesday, the 27th. Is that the right date? I think 27th is the date of what Tuesday is. It is. So Tuesday, the 27th at 4 p.m. That is the official one. Guys like Sal are a great follow. It'll be a great day to be in the Discord channel because I am terminally online. I am online way more than any adult should be. So I'm usually pretty quick with knowing about news, and like half the time somebody in the Discord channel has already beat me to when the different announcements and posts and things come up. So if you don't want to have to scour social media and just find out about things as soon as they happen, Discord is the best place to be. Come in, join us, support us here at Cover One, get invited into that Discord channel, and you can find out everything that's going on the second that it happens with fun, informed fans like yourselves who want to hang out there. Aaron, any final things for the people?
Nah, man, if you've been in Western New York here the last couple of days, football's in the air. I woke up and it was like 50 degrees and it was like a little steam coming off my coffee. You can smell it. It's in the air. Josh Allen's about to sling the ball. So just buckle up, get ready. We're close.
It's time, man. I can't wait. Tomorrow, I think it's going to be like in the 50s in the morning. It's going to be delightful. It's going to be just such a nice, crisp fall morning. It's my kid's first day of school tomorrow. We got to get up and walk them out to the bus, getting things started here.
I'm kind of jealous. I'm not going to lie. I can't wait for my kids to go back to school.
Sophia, though, she's been great. She's been a lot of fun. I've interacted a whole bunch of times in there with her. So there's lots of good people in there. Come and hang out. Help us out. On behalf of our awesome producer, Chris Kepner, and my partner in crime, Aaron Quinn, you have been listening to Cover One Buffalo. I am Greg Tompsett, and we are out.